It is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank, and it's AM 1160 WCCS, 101.1 FM. We often get into very serious discussions with this gentleman, and every discussion when it comes to legal matters ends up being a serious discussion because there are so many different angles from which to attack a problem. So let's get started today with another edition of Marshall Law here this morning on Indiana in the Morning. In this program intended for informational purposes only, the information does not constitute legal advice. The law constantly changes. The information may not be complete or correct depending on the date in your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. And because of that, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. And Marshall Chriswell is with us this morning. He is one of those licensed attorneys who is pretty well qualified to talk on every subject. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you with us. You know, in that disclaimer we read, we talk about different laws and different jurisdictions and everything. In terms of adoption, are the laws in Pennsylvania much different from the laws of surrounding states or the law of the United States as a whole?
Well, I guess I'm only licensed to practice in Pennsylvania, so I don't know how much adoption laws in Pennsylvania vary from different states. My sense is that it's pretty consistent, but I'm not entirely sure, what the differences are because I've only ever done adoptions in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about adoption. Foster care becomes a part of that conversation as well,
Sure.
Because frequently children who are adopted come out of a foster situation. So let's start there. Foster care, becoming a foster parent, and the legal ramifications of that. What are some of the issues that parents and potential parents need to be aware of?
Whenever you're a foster parent, you are essentially you have physical custody of a child or children, but legal custody of that child still lies with the agency. Here in Indiana County, it's the Children Youth Services, and it's pretty much the same in other counties. They're just called different. They go by different names, children and family services or something like that. But so the legal custody of that child remains with the state agency responsible for the welfare of the child, and basically all of the major decisions regarding the health, education, upbringing, welfare of the child are made by the agency, or at least they're very involved in those conversations. And then as a foster parent, you have physical custody of the child and the responsibility for minor and day-to-day decisions.
I would think there would be certain legal things you need to be absolutely certain of before you enter into any sort of a foster arrangement. It's not something easily or lightly entered into when you take responsibility for a child.
No, not at all. You have to understand, in working with foster families, you have to understand that you're going to give up a little bit of your privacy. You're going to have to report to Children Youth Services and other involved agencies. There are going to be, just to be qualified to be a foster family, you have to go through interviews and training and background checks and things like that. And you have people coming into your home to check on things and do a home study to ensure that the home is safe for a child of whatever age you're planning to foster, and also interviews of all your family members and things like that. So there is certainly a little bit of a loss of privacy there that some people don't really expect whenever they say, well, I just want to do what's right for a child. But the state has an interest in making sure that this is an appropriate place for the child to be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit more about something that is related but really is completely different, and that is the adoption of a child. When a family is considering adopting a child, I'm assuming they come to you as well in order to make sure that every T is crossed, every I is dotted, and they're doing things correctly, or they should. They should get themselves involved with an attorney.
Yeah, it's pretty, I don't want to say impossible, pretty difficult to go through the adoption process successfully without engaging legal counsel.
Mm-hmm.
There are all different types of adoptions. There is, from something like a step-parent adoption, where the child is already living in the home, and one parent has been out of the picture for a while, say its mom has remarried, and stepdad is going to adopt the child or children, something like that. There are all sorts of situations with broken families and tragic situations where other family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents need to take custody of a child whose parents have split or passed away or gone to jail or whatever the situation is. Mm-hmm. So intra-family adoptions. There are also informal adoptions where maybe it's not a family member, but you have parents who know that they're not going to be able to care for a child just because of where they are in their lives, and so they want to give this child up for adoption, but they don't want to go through the formality of the problems that can arise for them if they get state agencies and things involved. So they find a person that they know is going to be a good home for this child, and then there's an informal adoption, which still requires a court process and things, mm-hmm. but is not as involved as if you have CYS or an adoption agency involved. And then there are more formal agency adoptions, and then there's also, like we were talking about, there are adoptions through something like Children Youth Services, where a child has actually come into the system because parents were unable to care for him or her, and then there's a formal foster program, and eventually, in a lot of cases, those end up being adoptions.
What about cases where you are using an adoption agency from a foreign country or from another state coming into Pennsylvania? Are there specific legal issues that come up there that might be different from what we typically think of in our own community or within our own family?
Mm-hmm. International and intrastate adoptions get much more tricky because you're dealing with the laws of the other jurisdiction, whether it be the other country or the other state. So you need to make sure you're abiding by Pennsylvania law to the extent that it applies to the situation, but then also, so you may be engaging attorneys in two states in mm-hmm. some situations, but and then you've got international adoptions where there are obviously the laws of depending on what country you're in are very kind of a labyrinth of getting through, and the process. Sometimes it's not even the law. Sometimes the law is okay. The law is going to permit you to adopt, but you've got the bureaucracy and the politics at play in other countries that really can slow the process down and grind it to a halt sometimes. But you have to. So you're working with professionals on both sides, and it can certainly be a challenge.
So when a family wants to adopt, and they would come in to visit with you for that initial consultation, and then you would lay out a process for them, what happens at that first visit, and then how does the process unfold from there, from your standpoint, working with a family that wishes to adopt?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at first, you need to determine where this child is right now. Okay, does this family already have custody of the child? Is the child still in the custody of their biological parents or somebody else? And how are we going to make that transition as quickly as possible? Because usually there's a there's an impetus. There's a reason that someone has come and see you for an adoption. If a child is, if their welfare is in danger or something. So you need to make that initial determination, and then what is the family situation, or what kind of an adoption is this going to be? Are there parents that still have, are there biological parents that still have their parental rights intact, and are they willing to give those up? Or is this going to be an involuntary termination of their parental rights? So, you've kind of got two categories. Sometimes, like I said, parents realize that, I'm not in a position in my life to care for this child, so I'm going to consent to terminate my parental rights and responsibilities, and allow an adoption to move forward. Or sometimes, and a lot of times, this is when you have a state agency like CYS involved, that parents have really dug in their heels and say, well, I'm not going to give up my parental rights. I don't think that I'm an unfit parent. And then, the court has to decide whether there's going to be a termination of parental rights, because an adoption cannot proceed until that happens. So that's, you've got to really determine, what's the situation currently, and that's going to guide which part of the adoption statute, which part of what adoption laws you're going to use to effectuate the adoption. And that's kind of so that begins the process, and then the hard and the stressful part is this termination of parental rights, and it's very difficult for everybody involved, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. But eventually, you get through all that. If you get through all that and you have an adoption, the final adoption hearing can really be a pretty nice celebration. Yeah. And it's one of the times. I'm in court a lot, and most lawyers are, and it's an adoption hearing is one of the few times that I'm walking down the street from my office to the courthouse and I've got a smile on my face. Yeah. There are very few times you're walking into that courtroom and something good is going to happen for somebody, or something good is going to happen for somebody, so those are some really, really. It's just some really great times.
Are there times as an attorney when you must work extra hard to assure the parents that this is a final adoption and someone isn't going to come back to you in a couple of years and say, I want my kid back?
Yeah, that's something that we go through, because there's every step of the process leading up to that adoption hearing, there's uncertainty. There are appeal periods. If you do a termination, even if it's a voluntary adoption and everybody's consenting, there's still a period of time where the parent can come back and change their mind, or they can file an appeal to a higher court. All those things. So there's a lot of uncertainty moving forward. And you're right, there is a little bit of that. Wow, it's really. Are you sure? Is this really over? Yeah. Is the little boy or girl? Are they really ours now? And yeah, you're right.
Yeah, some trepidation there. So, folks, I'm sure are very, very interested to know more about this particular topic, and they can do some research on their own. And I would guess that would be pretty rudimentary, but. If they want to get into the finer points and they really are seriously considering adopting, then that's the time to give you a call and maybe sit down and get into some in-depth discussions.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So how would they do that?
You can call it 724-465-5826, online at www.westernpalawyer.com.
There you go. He's Marshall Chriswell. Thank you. It is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank. It's AM 1160 WCCS and 101.1 FM.